I was with Dadi psychically as well as physically, but not always physically, for about 45 years. And Dadi saw how we who had a background in Western culture were working with the spiritual knowledge, and each culture works with it through the lens of their culture. This is inevitable. And this is where the psychological aspects converge with the spiritual aspects. Dadi would see us sometimes struggling with certain things which were especially connected with our experience of our culture and the moral principles that we work with in order to deal with the different challenges that come in front of us. I remember one time when I was, over a long period of time, very many years, trying to fulfill the expectations that were there in terms of what we call spiritual service. In India, because of the nature of the culture, it's very easy for many people to relate to this spiritual knowledge and yoga, because everyone already knows karma, reincarnation, the Gita, spiritual practice, getting up early in the morning, being vegetarian, so many of these things. And so it's very easy for many people to come and to take benefit from the spiritual service that we offer at the centers. But when you bring that direct to another culture, then you find that the response is quite different. When I came in contact with Brahma Kumaris, it was 1974, and at that time the people of the Western world, that is Europe, North America, Australia, were extremely interested in Indian spirituality, and there was quite an influx of Indian gurus who were becoming very fashionable. And so the youth, at that time I was a young person in my early 20s, young people were really trying to understand, we can say, what's going on. This was the time of the Vietnam War, and there were many protests going on. This was the time when in the universities we were finding that the system was inappropriate. We wanted to study differently in a more open way. There were many things going on, and there was new ideas coming in, like a tsunami of new ideas coming in from the East, and a lot of interest in that. And so when Dadi first arrived in England in around April of 1974, I was actually the first person from the West who encountered the Brahma Kumaris in the West. And what I was drawn to especially was the vibration. Because when there are so many people proposing spirituality, there are also many who were deemed to be false, who were trying to extract large amounts of money. And so one didn't trust what was presented just up front. What Dadi brought was a vibration of the remembrance of God. And this is what I trusted. I also happened to recognize the knowledge and immediately take to it. But nevertheless, you take it, you accept it, you think everything is true, and then you take a step back and you try to assess it dispassionately and objectively. And the one thing that was coming through all the time was this vibration, which said to me, yes, this is real, the deep, deep feeling of the authenticity of that vibration. And that was what Dadi called yoga. Then after taking up the studies, the initiation course and foundation course and all of this, then came the matter of sharing this with other people. And we would try very deeply over many years. And sometimes we would feel that there must be something wrong with us, because our counterparts in India had hundreds of people coming, and with great difficulty we would have one or two, and people would ask us, how many people are coming, and we would say 2. And their response would be, oh, well, then obviously you're not very good teachers, you're not very good meditators, because if you were, then many people would come. But Dadi didn't see it like that, because she knew that when you bring something unfiltered into a completely different environment, it's going to be met with a different response than the response you get from the environment that it is connected with and germane to, which is the environment of India. So one day when I was feeling quite lacking in capacity, she said to me, "You haven't done anything. You can't do anything. You don't have to do anything." A very simple phrase, but very, very meaningful in terms of the psychological aspect. In terms of the spiritual, you're doing everything exactly according to the instructions. You're doing everything maybe better and more intensively than others, but looking for results. Dadi was really the Jnani soul, and I was much more relating to the Gyan, the knowledge, the actual spiritual knowledge, than other aspects, because I was someone who would trust truth when I saw it, and who was looking for truth. I was not really looking for affection or feelings or something like this. I was really interested in what is real, what is true, and that included how you work with your psyche that needs to be shaped and developed and brought to a level of clarity. So this powerful expression I found very arresting, and it made me think one of the shlokas of the Gita, in which the Gita says you have a right to action, but you do not have a right to the results. And this was one of the things that Dadi would talk to us about. Other people in the organization were not particularly focused on that, but Dadi was, because she had studied the Gita and other Indian scriptures very deeply for her whole life. And she would make this bridge between the scriptures and the spiritual knowledge. And this was a very important factor for me. So when she would say to me, okay, you haven't done anything, normally a person such as myself, and there are many who think about their action, their karma, in terms of, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Have you done what you're supposed to have done? If you have, then you will get the results that are assumed by fulfilling all of the necessary preconditions. But what Dadi was teaching us is that you do what's needed, and you continue to do that for a long, long period of time. She taught that you have to be patient. You have to be patient in terms of the service that you're offering. She would talk to us about the difference between planting an alfalfa seed, which comes up in a matter of days, and here we are in California, where we have the California redwood, which is the tallest tree in the world. I think it goes up to more than 100 meters. The seed of the California redwood is the same size as the alfalfa seed, very, very small, and it grows slowly. And she would say to us, what are you trying to grow, alfalfa or the big trees? And of course our attention would go to the big trees. Yeah, we want the big trees. So she said, patience. You have to cultivate. You have to watch and wait and understand that it takes a long time. Just keep doing what you have to do, and also move yourself away from the consciousness of being the person who's doing. Because naturally, when you get an instruction which says you must do what you have to do, then you think, I am doing. I have to do. Whenever Dadi would hear this word have to, she would say no. Don't think I have to. Because when you do that, you are investing your energy in the task, and this puts you in a situation psychologically where you are tied to the result and you're tied to the expectations. And she said having expectations is not the way to go. That's not how you want to do your spiritual practice. What you want is to adopt the consciousness of an instrument. And remember that this is not your task, this is God's task. And so if God wants to do something, it will get done with or without you. If you offer yourself as an instrument, it's rather like being a pipe. And the pipe doesn't really do anything. The pipe is sitting there, and the water or the energy, whatever it is that has to flow through that pipe, has to flow. And the important work of the pipe is to not be blocked. Because if the pipe is blocking, or if you are blocking the flow through your engagement, your involvement, your insistence, it should be this way and not that way, things like this. This, Dadi would say, this is going to block your capacity to be a conduit. And so, yes, you have to do everything, but it's all about being a conduit. and you have to be open so that the energy of God and the energy of God's wisdom and the energy of God's task can flow through you. God is incorporeal. We are also incorporeal, and we have bodies, so we have instruments through which our energy can flow to do action. But God is someone who doesn't do direct action. And so God uses instruments. So if you want to be an instrument of God, then Dadi would say you have to be clear and clean. So the most important thing that the instrument must do is make sure that you're clear and clean, and that you're not influenced by anything or anyone, and that you don't block it or deviate it or seek to change it or seek to control it or anything like this. So one has to empty oneself and make oneself just one like a riverbed to allow the river to flow through. And this is why she insisted, you haven't done anything. All of the things that you're involved in, make yourself as a conduit, because then the energy of God can flow through. And also, you're not going to take credit for what gets done. If you think, I have to do something, with the special emphasis on the word have to, then you get involved in taking credit and looking for the return. And she would say, no, what you're doing is, okay, you're being a pipe, you're being a conduit, but you're also making an investment. She would never let anyone say you're making a donation or a contribution. No. What are you talking about? How can you give anything to God? That's impossible. God is the bestower. She would always remind us of that. What you're doing is making an investment, because God is giving you an opportunity to put in your time, your energy, your resources, your wealth, your time. All of these elements that you have, you're investing them in God's work, and that investment will mature much later on. So do not try to eat green fruit. She would always say, don't try to eat green fruit, you get a stomachache. Let it just go in there, let it mature, and in the meantime, accumulate spiritual power, because when you have that energy going through, obviously you're going to accumulate. And also, she would tell us, give a lot of time to your meditation. She would say the most important is the early morning meditation, which is called Amrit Vela, the hour of nectar, because at that time it's the most difficult. At that time you are the closest to your subconscious. At that time you're the closest to God. God has kept aside that time for yogis. So if you want to be a yogi, you have to be there for the appointment at that time. So you haven't done anything. Whenever you think you've done anything, let it go. The second part of the phrase, you can't do anything. Sometimes you get caught up in this feeling, I have to do something, I want to do something. You have this energy of doing. She called it kartapan, that you want to do something. But she said, avoid that. That is not a good way to go. Just keep yourself available. Always be there. Many opportunities will come for you. All you have to do is be present. Be open, be competent. An instrument keeps itself well tuned. If you think of yourself as a musical instrument, you have to be well tuned. If you think of yourself as a piece of technical equipment, you have to be precise, aligned, calibrated, well-oiled. All of these analogies are there. So this is our responsibility. Just make sure that you are a really usable instrument. And then God will use you. God will use you. And then you don't have to do anything. So much of our mental energy, our emotional energy, gets tied up in this feeling of obligation. And this is actually a psychological issue, this feeling of obligation. There should not be a feeling of obligation. That comes from some or another issues that you may have. No. You are, you have right, you have responsibility to keep yourself clean, clear, and well calibrated. Make sure that your level of yoga is up to the mark. Study well so that you really understand what this is, and then open yourself to be used as an instrument. Create your fortune by investing your time, your energy, and whatever is there. And then Dadi would say, be subtle. Because when you're subtle, you have to catch the signals. And there are signals, very, very subtle signals you have to catch, you have to interpret and apply. And when your yoga is good, you will do it well. So let us have a few moments of meditation and think about this principle of being an instrument, being a conduit, being somebody who makes themselves really a good instrument to be used by the divine. Do not try to block it or control it or do it your way. Be careful of ego, be careful of being rigid. Try to be authentic, real, connected, and above all, have faith in yourself. So how to bring this into a meditation? Dadi was always telling us your meditation needs to be about deep thought so that you can create the stage of consciousness that corresponds to the meaning of what you're thinking about. Dadi would talk about the yoga of the intellect. She would say, if your yoga is right, then everything you do will be correct and you won't make mistakes. And if you are making a mistake, there'll be some sort of a signal that will come. And if your consciousness is subtle, you'll catch that signal and stop doing that. So this is all about being subtle. So think, I haven't done anything. I can't do anything. I don't have to do anything. And just bring that idea deep into yourself and just see if there is a part of you that says, I've done this, I have to do that. You know, this impulse comes inside. And just be sure of yourself as that pure spirit, that pure soul. And be soul conscious. Really strive to be soul conscious, open, the pure instrument for God to work through you. And just be like empty. She would often say, just be empty. So that the I of arrogance doesn't exist. Let there be just the eye of the soul, that extraordinary point of light. Let that eye be used by God. Let that eye be conscious of what I am, and stay away from doing. Be a vehicle, be an instrument, be away from this sense that I did or I have to do. Om Shanti.